Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about how we can build stronger reasons for our body paragraphs. We want to think of our reasons as kind of like an umbrella, and our supporting details fall underneath our reasons. But I've noticed that in our persuasive essays that our reasons are not as strong as they could be. So we're going to focus on how we can develop stronger reasons that are much more persuasive than the reasons we have so far. Okay, we want to remember too that the reasons are our main idea. The supporting details will prove our reason to be true. Okay, let's think about what our learning target's going to be. We want to be able to say that we can improve the reasons that we include in our persuasive essays by making them strong and persuading our reader emotionally, logically, and ethically. And we're going to talk about what that means. It's important for us to be able to build on our writing and create strong reasons that persuade our reader in many different ways, and that's why we're doing this, okay? So we have to remember the bigger picture here. It's not just for the assignment, but it's something that we need to learn in life, in our writing. We need to be able to enhance it. Now, there's 3 different types of arguments we're going to look at tonight. First is the Greek word logos, which means logic. And it's an argument that's based on reason. And I'll explain that in more detail in a minute. Then we have the Greek word pathos, which means passion or emotions. And this is an argument that uses emotional words or sentences to get the audience to accept one's viewpoint. It's intended that the message inspire followers. And lastly, ethos. Ethos is one's ethics or morals. It's an ethical or moral argument that appeals to the reader's morals or values. It's what the reader believes is morally or ethically right. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, called it the moral rightness of an argument. Now, where did all this get started? It all started in Greece with the art of persuasion. Now, I hope that you know where Greece is. Here we go, let's take a look. And let's see how this all started. Well, it first began with Aristotle. Who was Aristotle? Well, simply stated, he was a famous Greek philosopher who studied the art of persuasion. And his teacher was Plato. You'll learn a lot about them more so in high school. Plato was also a Greek philosopher, and they shared a lot of these thoughts together, okay? But it really all started with a book. And the book was called The Art of Rhetoric. Rhetoric being persuasion. Okay, in this book, Aristotle identified 3 methods of persuasion. And obviously, he called them ethos, pathos, and logos. Yeah, here's my little puppy, and every time you see him, I want you to be reminded that the following information is really, really important. Okay, so focus here. Ethos, let's go over what an ethos argument is. It's a moral argument, okay? It comes from the Greek word, I hope I can say this right, meaning ethikos, meaning moral or showing moral character. It's an argument that demonstrates a moral or ethical argument that appeals to the reader's morals and values. It's what the reader morally or ethically might believe is right. For instance, if your friend did something to offend you or hurt you and your mother and father, they might argue that forgiveness is the right or the moral path to choose, and that holding a grudge or showing resentment will get you nowhere. That is a moral. It's a value. Take a look at this quote. Forgiveness is not something we do for other people. We do it for ourselves to get well and to move on. That is a belief. It's a moral. It's an ethical value. There he is again. You want to pay attention to the second argument, which is pathos. It's an emotional argument. And with an emotional argument, I try to appeal to my reader and my audience with their emotions. It appeals to pathos touch a nerve, or they compel people not only to listen, but to also take the next step and act in the world. Those who wish to persuade you will play with your emotions. They may persuade you with fear, with love, with patriotism, guilt, hate, or joy. Take a look at these pictures down here. In the left-hand corner, we have a dog being rescued. That pulls on me emotionally. It says saving animals from disaster. This would make me want to donate to this rescue organization or whoever might be putting this poster up. In the middle, we have a young girl who's obviously in destitute situations and circumstances, and we have the UNICEF program who helps these children. It would certainly persuade me to donate to UNICEF because this is pathos. It pulls on my emotions. Okay, and if you've seen this documentary, The Inconvenient Truth, We're All on Thin Ice, this also pulls on my emotions. So you want to remember that pathos is an emotional argument. There he is again. You want to pay attention to the third and final method of persuasion, which is logos. Logos means logic. Okay, and it refers to any attempt to appeal to the intellect or our brains. Okay, logos kind of appeals, if you can believe this or not, to the left side of the audience's brain or the reader's brain. The audience relies on reasoning and facts to make a decision. It could be numbers, polls, statistics. They're also examples of persuasive use of logic. The left side of our brain being analytical thought, logic, language. It's where we use a lot of our knowledge from science and math. Some more examples are facts, expert opinions or quotations, definitions, statistics, examples, an anecdote, an incident often based on a writer's personal experience, or present an opposition and give reasons and evidence to prove the opposition, meaning the other side, wrong. This is all logos. It's a logical way to defeat the opposing side. It's a logical way of arguing because you can't really argue with facts. Okay, let's do a quick review and make sure that we all understand this, alrighty? Ethos is an ethical or moral argument. Pathos is an emotional argument. And lastly, logos is a logical argument. It will pull on the reader's logics. Pathos will pull on the reader's emotions, and ethos will pull on the reader's ethical or moral arguments, okay? Let's take a look at some examples. Okay, so we know that logos means an argument based on reason. Okay, so let's look at some examples together. The OnStar service inside your car is better than carrying a cell phone because a cell phone can't call for you when you're injured. This kind of reason kind of makes sense. You're thinking to yourself, well, that might actually be true. So because of that, it's logical, it's based on reason, and it's really making me think about this more carefully. Another argument that might be logical. If someone said there was no discernible difference in the ACT scores of graduating seniors who wore uniforms and those who didn't. Now this is a fact, and because this is a fact, because you're proving it with a major point, it's more persuasive to me. It seems much more logical, and I say to myself, if the topic is school uniforms, I begin to think, you know what, that might actually be true. Another argument, stand firm, parents. If you say no at first and then give in later, you're only teaching your child to beg, whine, and pester you. So if someone were to argue that, it would make me think analytically. It would make me reflect on being a parent. It would make me reflect on my own actions. So that's why we would say these are logical arguments. Let's look at some examples of pathos arguments. Passion or emotions. Remember, it's the use of emotional arguments to get the audience to accept one's viewpoint, okay? It's intended to inspire followers. So here's an example. A politician says that we have to fight the war over there so that we don't have to fight the war here at home. When I hear this, it persuades me and it pulls on my emotions. And it makes me think, you know what? It's probably better to have us fight over there in another country so that it's not brought to our own country, so that we don't have to be afraid to go out into the streets. It certainly inspires me or persuades me possibly to accept being a part of a war. Let's look at this argument. A newspaper editorial for private school vouchers states that our public schools are dens of thieves and thugs. So if someone were to say that, then the comment dens of thieves and thugs persuades me, and it makes me start to reflect on what type of individuals might attend a public school. Now, am I saying this is true? Absolutely not. But I'm trying to use this as an example. Or if someone said, if you love me, you would do this. Right away, it pulls on my emotions, and it kind of persuades me. I used to say this to my sister when I wanted her to do something for me. I would say, if you love me, you'll really do this. Okay, so we've looked at several examples of pathos, and now let's look at ethos. Ethos is a moral or ethical argument that appeals to the reader's morals or values. It's what the reader believes is morally or ethically right. All right, so one example. If someone said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We know John Fitzgerald Kennedy said that. It immediately makes me call on what I value and what my morals might be. And I start to ponder, you know what? I should be doing more for my country. I should be doing more for my town or my community. It pulls on what I believe in. It inspires me. Or, the way ahead is not easy. We shall need all the wisdom, imagination, and courage we can muster. We must and shall guarantee the civil rights of all of our citizens. Harry Truman said this when he was addressing the NAACP. This message inspires me. It makes me realize that I know things aren't going to be easy, but we need to be able to muster the wisdom, imagination, and courage that we need to come together and guarantee the civil rights of all of our citizens. Now let's do a little practice and see how well you understand. So you can write this down on a piece of paper and I'll tell you what the answer is, all right? Logos, ethos, or pathos. What about the statement, we are the only company who will roll over and save your unused phone minutes each month? Do you think that's a logos argument, an ethos argument, or a pathos argument? Take a minute and think about it. Okay, if you guessed that it was logos, a logical argument, you're totally right, okay? It's the fact that they're saying they want to save us money, it's a logical argument. Who can argue with that? What about Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous quote, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character? Logos, ethos, or pathos argument. Take a minute, think about it. All right, if you said that it was an ethos argument, you were absolutely right. This pulls on my ethics, it pulls on my morals and my values, and it persuades me to realize what really is right. Let's take a look at this one. A high school runs an article about drinking and driving with detailed descriptions and graphic pictures of automobile crashes. What do you think that might be? Logos, ethos, or pathos? Okay, if you guessed pathos, you're absolutely right. If I saw these pictures, these graphic pictures of automobile crashes, I might think of my family members. I might think of my friends. And I would think very carefully on the consequences of driving drunk. And so it pulls on my emotions. So we've learned a lot tonight. Some important information for us to remember for tomorrow. We learned about 3 different types of arguments or persuasive arguments, and these are going to make our body paragraph reasons stronger. We learned about ethos, an ethical or moral argument. We learned about pathos, an emotional argument, and we learned about logos, a logical argument. If we use these types of arguments to persuade our reader when we're creating our reasons for our body paragraphs, our reasons will be much stronger than where they're at right now. And this is something we certainly have to remember as we create supporting details tomorrow. Now make sure you're aware of these 3 different types of persuasive arguments, because we're going to start the class tomorrow with a do now activity that will require you to identify some examples. See you tomorrow.